All right, folks, we should have found that on this problem with the extra load hanging off the end of the cantilevered side, the beam's now not just a simple beam, but it actually has a cantilever, that we have on the right-hand reaction of 14.5 kips, and on the left-hand reaction, we've got a reaction of 5.5 kips. So again, our shear diagram goes underneath the diagram that has all the loads on it. Our moment diagram goes underneath the shear diagram. So we'll start with the shear diagram. We start out at 0. First thing we do is we come up a positive 5.5 kips because that's our reaction. Nothing goes on until I hit the 5 kip load. That is a negative 5 kips added to 5.5 kips, so that brings me down to a 0.5 kip shear at that point. Nothing goes on for the next 4 feet until I hit the 10 kip load. That pushes me down to a value of a negative 9.5 kips. Nothing goes on for the next 4 feet until I hit the right-hand reaction. That reaction brings me up a positive 14.5. Since I'm down at negative 9.5, that brings me up to a value of positive 5 kips. Nothing goes on until the very end of the beam, and then I get to that 5 kip load downward, and that brings my shear diagram back down to 0. So even with the little overhang, I still start at 0, I still end at 0. Okay? The difference is you can see now the shear diagram crossed 0 at a couple places. Okay? All right. So again, if we're just interested in sort of like the overall moment diagram, what it looks like, the easiest thing to do is just take the blocks of area and sort of do the area of each one separately, and then we'll get into adding them up. So the first block of area is 5.5 kips high. It's 2 feet wide, so that's positive 11 foot kips. The second block of area is 0.5 kips high. It's 4 feet wide, so that gives me a positive 2 foot kips. The next block of area is negative 9.5 kips high, if you will, and 4 feet wide. So that gives me a negative 38 foot kips of area. And the final block of area is 5 kips high. It's 5 feet wide. It's above 0, so that's plus 25. Okay? So, what does the moment diagram look like? Well, I start out at 0. By the time I get to the end of this first block, I'm up to positive 11, right? When I add onto that, this next block of area, I'm only adding plus 2 foot kips, so that bumps me up a little bit up to positive 13 foot kips. Now I got this big block of negative area. By the time I add it on, I will go from positive 13 foot kips, and I add on a negative 38 foot kips. So that brings me down to a negative 25 foot kips. And finally, I add on the last block of area, which is positive 25, and again, that brings me back up to 0. Okay? So again, even with this overhang, we're still going through doing the shear moment diagram the same way. The moment diagram looks a little bit different, but that's because, you actually had, 2 places where it crossed. I mean, you went from positive area to negative area back to positive area, so you had 2 places where a shear diagram crossed. Okay? You notice that, we always talk about the maximums. Well, one maximum is sort of a positive maximum, and another maximum is a negative maximum, okay? The moment diagram does, I mean, going from positive to negative does mean something, all right? What do you think it means? What does it have? I mean, with shear being positive or negative, there's really not that much practical aspects to it, but the moment diagram going positive to negative does have a relationship with something. Do you know what that is? Well, the direction of what? Oh yeah, the way that the beam actually bends. When you look at this beam, how do you think it's bending? I mean, just in general, how do you think it's bending? Well, I mean, but it's supported, right? So wouldn't it make sense that it bends like this, but then when it gets over here towards the support, it's got to bend around like that, right? Okay? You see this positive area right here? You see where it crosses zero? That 0 point, and again, it's not a good representation of my diagram, but that 0 point means there's no moment. If that beam doesn't have any moment, is it flexed at all? So at 0 moment, there's what they call point of inflection, where it stops bending this way and it starts bending the other way. Now that's important because, like, when you get into certain beam materials, you want to know which side of the beam is in tension. So from here to here, it's bending like this. From here to here, it's sort of bending like that. Okay? So that does have an impact on us.